Well, welcome to this Friday edition of the Status Chat. We're in the last month, halfway through it, and we're a day late last two episodes, and that was a week or so back. So this title is November 2025 Housing Market Trends Report. This is episode 284, 12/12 of 25. Before we get started, as always, hit the QR code if you want to go hit the Status Chat playlist over on the YouTube page. You can find it there easily for your convenience. So today's episode, we're just going to look at just one story, and I'm not going to look at it too long because there's a lot to it, and you might find something that you want to look at that I didn't mention, so I will give you the link in the description over on the YouTube page. You'll have to go there to find it. So if I post this elsewhere, like I often do, with just the link or the video itself, you'll still have to go to YouTube to find it. Or what you might do is just make note of this. This is from Realtor.com, and the title is November 2025 Monthly Housing Market Trends Report. All right, so that just came out. Now what I want to do is we can hit these 4 bullet points. They're pretty, inclusive as they are, but I do want to look at some of the graphs because, we can get some bad information or bad conclusions that are based upon the information that we're given. Here it's saying the inventory climbs for the 25th straight month, 12.6% year over year, but growth is slowing. And I think that is a key in this whole phrase. This is what we're looking for. Growth is slowing. That is the cherry on top. Yeah, we may be getting more properties out there, which is switching from a seller's market to the buyer's market, somewhere in between. But the growth of the extra inventory is slowing. I do want to point that out to you. All right, buyer activity remains soft as homes stay on the market longer, 3 days year over year, which, that is from last November. That's not overly significant in my mind. And prices ease minus. Notice that that's a minus 0.4% year over year. Now, to me, I think that's both good as it sits for both parties. Because being slightly negative, less than 1%, it gives, buyers a little bit of hope that prices are coming down, and it actually isn't falling much for the seller. So it looks pretty good. I think where it gets to be a problem, quite honestly, is where sellers they've gotten used to it maybe in the last 4 years or so, 3 years, 2 years, whatever, and they want to see some huge percentage increase of equity based upon a price that they're not really able to get. So you're not really losing value from the seller's point, but it's not getting them the growth that they had quickly become spoiled to. All right, the next one is delistings, and this is what I want to look down below at. Delistings remain well above seasonal norms and outpace the inventory gains, with about 6% of listings coming off the market each month since June. Now, delistings is something that's where it goes on and they decided it's not getting enough interest. They really want, or maybe they have to have that high price. Can't get it sold for the huge percentage, maybe over what they were anticipating to get in and out of it. Who knows? And they just decide not to sell it. And I know people will fuss at me and they'll say, Del, well, back when Biden was in charge, you were criticizing that. And now that Trump is in charge, you don't like the 50-year mortgages and portables for various reasons. I'm equal opportunity because I am more aligned with the Austrian school of economics than I would be the Keynesian version of it, or Keynes. It depends on how and who you learn to say the numbers with. Well, if we go back to this, affordable, we're going to bring this up a little bit. Affordable refuge markets stand out nationally, posting some of 25's strongest price gains as cost-conscious buyers shift to lower-priced metros. And I'm not going to spend any time on that simply because if you're in my area, you're already looking for something that's not necessarily a refuge market by my definition. Now, here we have the big I. This is when the article starts. I'll let you read that, but I want to get down here. You have links, inventory active, flows, listings, delistings, and pending listings. We can hit that. And here's what I want to look at. Flows slow. A look at new listings, delistings, and pending sales. There's going to be a couple of these here, I think. We can look that south is actually negative, the only area that is negative. On an annual basis, newly listed homes increased in all regions but the south. Now, I think that's significant because, we were one of the refuges where the people fleeing the blue city, blue state economics of higher and higher taxes and that kind of stuff, some of the crime, defund the police, and all the stuff that when I mention them is sounding political, but it's not about who you should vote for, who you shouldn't. It's just that the people who could were selling out and moving away. We had gotten over COVID and started to shake things loose. Economies were rough in those areas and they still had high taxes and people just simply moved out. We saw, in addition to something, speaking specifically like of California, where we were a net beneficiary of some of those California transplants, there were mudslides and fires, and just recently we've had the Palisades fire and nothing is getting rebuilt, and they're over-regulated with the most gosh awful mess of permissions and whatever. And there are some speculations out there that the government is really trying to make it difficult to fatigue people, so they end up selling their pieces of land where their houses burned down instead of rebuilding, and then somebody will snap them up. There's always a conspiracy theory out there for you. I neither confirm nor deny them. I just tell you that some people say that, but people have moved from there. So the ones who can move do move, and the ones who can't move stay, and that leads to a decrease in tax base, and that means that more people need help and there's less people to pay for, so they raise their taxes and do even worse. So when we look back at this, we see that the South was a beneficiary. The Texas, Florida, Tennessee, there are states without income taxes. We got a lot of them coming our way. But when we look at this, I want to point out these colors because I know you're not blind. But here we have the green, orange. These are different years, right? We have a little darker green here. That's kind of more of a teal green. That's more of a baby blue, Carolina blue, perhaps. But you see, all of them, when we come around to December, are nosediving year after year after year. And this is before COVID and all that nonsense. And so we still see that we peaked in the green season, as we've talked about. And by the time it starts getting into the gray toward the wintertime, it always tails off. So yes, if we want to look at that and say flows slow for new listings, we're already coming down. And here's a point I want to point out to you. Because we are seeing a greater slowdown in new listings in the South, I personally believe that that's going to affect the inventories in the future, because if we got new listings, those are the ones that are being completed. And so maybe we might, when things get rolling good again, because people are a little bit listening to the devil on one shoulder telling them that the sky is falling, and other people are saying, well, it's not really, it's just got to look at the circumstances. By the way, I will have something different at the end. I'll tell you after we do the numbers. But I want to point out something to you so that you don't think this is truly political. This is economical. This is just macroeconomics, the way we look at it. So we go back to that. We see that we're tailing off, and it's really not, it's at a little bit lower level, yes, than we were from, say, the previous year was 2025 is the brown, the kind of pinkish little color. And then we have the purpley. The purpley, I think, is this one right here. If my eyes without my glasses tell me this is, so we're above where we were, but we're still coming down a little bit, but it's shaped normally. Now we're going to look at this delisting. This is an important thing I want to look at if we still have our little map in here. Delistings surge cements 2025 as year of the frustrated seller. Right, because again, I'm not saying people are being greedy, But back in 2004 to 2008, we got in that role of everything's just skyrocketing through, so we could just always count on maybe having a big mortgage and just paying essentially interest or mostly interest or only interest. And then at the end of living in a brand new house, we wouldn't have it beat up too bad, and we would sell it in 2 years, having then banked the equity that came from the price rising up. That's one thing that got us in trouble. Well, we're going through a little different type of market transition. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, when we get down to this map, I'll leave this so you can read this. I want to look at this kind of heat map, because this, I think, is important, because I'm going to talk a little bit about how we cannot just ignore politics because we're tired of the devil on each side yelling in our ear and catching us in the middle. I live in the middle, where probably the bulk of our people do. But up here at the chart, 0 is 0 delistings. They're not taking them off the market, right? 0, not taking them off the market. And the deepest red, they are taking them off the market. Let's look at what this tells us. Now, this is just my opinion. And I noticed that in Miami, the deep red, this was a really hard hit area when we were seeing the blue city migrations from these areas. You know, California, they were coming to Texas and Tennessee and Florida. Well, if you'll do an individual look, if you just want to see that I'm not just being cray-cray, look at how much that the Florida rush was on. And there are now are people that are starting to see a little higher foreclosure rate. Guess where? In Florida, because it saw the biggest boom, and now it's going to see a pretty good adjustment. And the people perhaps that bought during that big boom post-COVID, but between now, I think you might find some of them are putting them on the market, just trying to maybe break even or get out, and they're not able to do that. But look at foreclosure rates in the Florida area, particularly I would say in the Miami, because that's the one that's got the most delistings. So it's telling me that people are putting it on the market, they're not getting what they're looking for, and so they're just pulling them off the market. Well, look at Nashville area, Metro Nashville. We don't have our area because we're outside the metro area, but we see it's sort of there. It says up at the top 33%. So 1 in 3. That may be giving us indication that maybe people might need to just cool their jets for another couple of years, and then they'll probably be okay. What does it tell me when I look at these areas? Well, we know that people were on the coast, moved from California up to Washington, right, in this area. So those are not in bad shape because they did actually have net migration, I believe, into these states. But when we see this area up here, what is it telling us that we're doing? And around here, Raleigh Metro, Charlotte Metro, you know, we had a tragedy in Charlotte not long ago on the rail. And you see these areas are not being delisted. And I interpret these areas that people are simply putting them on the market and they're going to get sold. They're going to get sold at some price. They're not taking them off the market, even though the market seems to be a little slow. They're going to put them up there. Now we can look at each one of them and see maybe each of these markets are actually still seeing growth rates. But when I look at it in terms of interstate migration and rebalancing of our markets, I personally sort of right now, until something convinces me otherwise, I believe that people are in fact moving from certain areas into others, and they may have got some of that COVID peak money. Now let's look at this right here. Gauging momentum. Pace moves sideways, prices tick down. Well, the price is ticking down and not really all that bad if you're looking to make a deal. Maybe you're not making as much from the seller's part, but you still got to have a buyer to make a transaction. So if it gets buyers to finally do something, well, there we go. And what do we got here? Median days on market. Look how we historically came across in between September and November. We normally go up on our days on market, don't we? Well, what are we doing here this year with our big kind of coffee brown color? We're kind of going a little sideways. So although it may seem like we're in a not a great spot market-wise. I think we're actually doing pretty good. Now, I would expect it to tick up in December when we get our January numbers for this month, because it is Christmas and all that, and holidays or Hanukkah, whatever you might have. And it historically, as you can see by the years, jumps up pretty good between November and December. So what am I priming you for? So if someone who wants to be the horned one in your ear tells you that, oh, in December, the days on the market surge, you know, because you have seen it now, that is a normal path. But you see, we're also flatter here in this year, 2025. So I think that's a good thing. Well, all right, before we get to our numbers, I do want to just remind you, if you will, hit the subscribe button, smash that button, and tune in. And if you will, it helps me with algorithms, the more views that you have. And you can always leave a comment. You can tell me that you think I'm full of stuff if you want, and you disagree or whatever. That's fine. Leave a comment, hit a like, share me out if you will. And maybe we can create a situation again where fear doesn't sell, intelligence sells, where we make confident decisions based upon what we see. All right. So last week, 12/05/25, we had 26,186 in the availables. We had 43,948 in the under contracts. Both of those did reduce, and we just saw that nationwide we tend to be seeing inventory going up. But what did we see specifically for the South? What did we see? So is our data following and tracking that? We did see the under contract ratio go up by a little bit to 15 from 14, and this week 12/12/25, inventory is still increasing a little bit. That reversed that trend to 28,786 in the availables and 38,25 in the under contracts. And they're diverging, and so we've got an under contract ratio of 13. That did jump 2 percentage points. So there we have that. Now, what I'm going to do here is, like I said, I've got something a little bit different. I want you to hit that pause button on the video if you want to read this, because I thought about doing something a little different. I've got a definition so that you can start, if you're not into the economy type stuff, you got a better stuff to do. Economists tend to be some boring people. We just have a little definition. I want you to read this. Hit the pause button, because I'm going to go ahead and let it just sit there for just a little bit, because some people may not be interested in reading it. So here we go.